What's happening, team? It's Liam from Lazarus Personal Training, back again with AEW After Dark, where I review Dark and talk about some points that helps us further our career within professional wrestling. Bit of a different edition for you this week. This is a audio, basically a podcast sort of version, to give you a little bit of a reason why my laptop decided to break on me recently, which means that it needs to go in for repair. So I'm on Ella's laptop. Obviously, I don't have my video editor on there, but I was able to download an audio editor. So I thought, let's keep the show on the road. Let's keep rolling with it, but it's going to be in podcast form. It also does highlight how bad my audio setup is, so I apologize about the quality on this. This week's episode comes out on the 9th of March, and what I thought was interesting this week, or what I wanted to look at this week as my main point of topic, was AEW's use of factions and teams within the company, and how I think that can be a benefit, or I think it can be a bit of a hindrance. Where I think it's been the biggest help in terms of building people and giving people an identity has been within the Dark Order. The Dark Order this week were in 4-man action. It was, let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head, Evil Uno, Colt Cabana, Stu Grayson and Alex Reynolds against Aaron Fry, John Cruz, D3 and Varay Morales. It was a fun match. It was a really fun match, and I thought what was really good about it, and what is really good about the Dark Order, is that they all bring different elements to the table. Every single member of the Dark Order brings something different, but there is this underlying sense of unity and underlying sense of a stable that sits within them all. They all have very similar gear. Even Colt Cabana changed to more of a purple theme. They all show individuality as they wrestle, but you can still feel like they are Dark Order together. I think AEW have done a great job in terms of building Dark Order, and I also think that the wrestlers within Dark Order have done an excellent job on finding ways to go, how do we make this faction as good as possible to elevate everybody? And I think absolutely everybody within Dark Order, from Evil Uno right through to 10, right to Anna Jay as well, have grown and have improved with their time in Dark Order. I think another faction that have done really well are Team Taz. So in the first match this week on Dark, it is Powerhouse Hobbs against Angel Fashion. Hobbs looks intimidating, he looks big, he looks powerful. And when you compare this to when he first came into the company, where he was regular good guy Will Hobbs, yes, he had a really motivating story. His story was very emotional in that his brother wanted to be his manager, his brother died, I think he was shot, and that was Will Hobbs' spur to go forward, and that's a really emotional story. But in saying that, I think that being with Team Taz, allowing a different persona to come through, has just elevated up his confidence, and he looks more comfortable in the ring. And obviously that comes with time in the company and just wrestling more, but I do believe that Team Taz has done a great job in terms of elevating Will Hobbs up. And again, if you look at Team Taz, everybody has an individual role. Again, even if you look at Hook, who's just sort of there at the moment, he appeared with them and was actually more involved than I've ever seen him before at Revolution. So they're probably going to get ready to pull the trigger with Hook as well. And again, I think Team Taz has done a really good job in terms of elevating and giving Will Hobbs some sort of role that he can grow into. And then this is probably to the surprise of nobody, but when I think of factions in AEW, and I think of ones that don't particularly do well, the Nightmare Collective, Nightmare Factory springs straight to mind. Now, obviously, these guys aren't the biggest faction in the world, and it almost runs in like rank of like Cody Rhodes is right up at the top. You've got the Natural Nightmares underneath him, and then you have the Nightmare Family Collective Factory all under them. Also, there is too many nightmare things, and I have no clue on which is which. But let's take, for example, this trios match that happened, where it was Peter Avalon, Bononi, and Ryan Nemeth, and they took on Aaron Solo, Brick Aldridge, and Dean Alexander. They all came out in the nightmare garb. They all had the jackets on. It was like, okay, these guys are all from the same place, which is nice. It gives them a bit of unity, a bit of identity, and it almost elevates the stock up a little bit. The problem with it is that at the moment, the Nightmare Family, the Nightmare Factory, stands for nothing. it almost just stands for these lads are still training, and it just gives them a little bit of purpose. But I do think it takes away from their personality a bit because they all have to fall under the same umbrella. Aaron Solo has to fall under the same umbrella as Brick Aldridge, and they're two completely different wrestlers. And then I actually think that when you look at the Nightmare Factory, what it should be and who they should be following is QT Marshall, who is very much going down a heel role at the moment. If you watched him again, Revolution, I think that was his heel turn. He defeats Fuego del Sol, and he's very much a heel in that match throughout this. Also, credit to Fuego, who did excellent in the match, and even with like the little slip on the springboard, it still added to the match and actually made sense. So I hope Fuego gets some sort of contract coming out of this. But just to go back on point again, QT Marshall is a heel. And I feel like the Nightmare Factory could almost benefit from being heels where they are like, yeah, we're the feeder system straight into AEW, and what are you going to do about it? But at the moment, they're very much like, oh, we're faces. And again, where this might fall down a little bit is, say, with Lee Johnson. Lee Johnson is finding his growth, he is finding his charisma, he is finding the more an elevated confidence in the ring, but then he's still under this banner of the Nightmare Factory, which, again, I think almost limits him a little bit, and I would like to see him step out and escape from that. Also in that match, you had Peter Avalon, Cesar Bononi, and Ryan Nemeth. I really liked that grouping, and I think it works, and I think that's a great example of how to take a couple of people that were doing not a lot and bring them together to give them something to do. My only thing with that is where when we talk on, say, Dark Order, where there is a unity around them, I don't feel like that unity is there yet, but they are very much finding the groove. It's still early days for them. I would like to see more from them, and that's me saying I'd like to see more from Ryan Nemeth. So, if I'm saying that, yeah, that I probably want to see more out of them. And then in a similar vein to factions, I think AEW do a good job with tag teams and bringing people to get together to give them some extra purpose. I think a big example of this is the Varsity Blondes, where they obviously see something in Griff Garrison and they see something in Brian Pillman Jr., and also he's got that name behind him. But individually weren't really doing anything, so they've brought them together. My problem with that is that I don't feel like they want to be a tag team. It was very much singles wrestling. Brian wrestles like he is a singles wrestler. They didn't even have a tag finish. It was just Griff Garrison hitting, I think it was a discus forearm, but I can't particularly remember. But I know that they didn't hit a tag finish. Yes, they've got the same gear. Yes, they have hair. But I don't feel like they've spent enough time together to work together. And that is where you look at someone like, again, just to go back to Dark Order, it feels like Dark Order has spent ages together, working together, learning together. And I want to see that from Varsity Blondes. However, I don't know if we'll get that. I think they'll probably get broken up at some point in the near future to elevate one of them or to give them a little bit of storyline purpose. But yeah, for me, Varsity Blondes need that unity while having the differences. And at the moment, it just feels like it's two singles wrestlers in the same pair of trunks. Also, while both in singles action, I think Carly Bravo and Diamante are in a similar position at the moment with their tag teams. Carly Bravo has just started teaming up with Sean Dean. They've been brought together because they are very much the same person. They served in the military and now they're wrestling. So it makes sense to put them together as a tag team. The problem will come for them, and they've only tagged up, I think, 3 times now, and this is Carly Bravo's first AEW singles match. The the test will come over time as to tell the difference between the two. I think there's enough there. I think Cali Bravo has been presenting himself as a bit more brash and a bit more arrogant, whereas Sean Dean is a little bit more reserved. Hopefully they can make that shine throughout their tag team stuff and include that into how they tell tag team stories. Also on this front is Diamante, who had a singles match this week. It's the first time that I've seen her wrestle a singles match in forever. She's been teaming up with Eva Lee's for a long time, and I feel like they've run their course. I don't feel like they are really moving forward at all. If anything, I think they're moving backwards because they aren't progressing. And they're rarely on Dynamite. I can't remember the last time I've seen them on Dynamite. And they are two basically the same wrestlers. I don't see much difference between the two of them. Now, when it comes to tag team wrestling and creating factions, like I mentioned, There needs to be a unity and there needs to be difference. You need different pieces of the cog to make the machine work, and that machine overall is a faction. However, I feel like Diamante and Evilise, and I think there's something Carly Bravo and Sean Dean may run into, is that they are the same cog pieces. And when you have the same pieces, that's not how you build a machine. And finally, a couple of points from me just to finish out on my general observations of AEW Dark this week. I thought overall this was a really good episode and moved really fluidly. That might be the case that I'm not actually filming in between bits, but I'm going to take it as it was actually a really fun episode of Dark. A lot of different things in there, a lot of nice moments where I went, oh, that was cool and this was cool. For example, Rising's cutoff I thought worked really well and I actually really enjoyed that. Colt Cabana's hot tag was fun and different. Just the Dark Order in general looked like they were enjoying themselves. Someone needs to tell whoever's taking the training at the Nightmare Factory, QT Marshall, that a nip up into fire is fine for one of them, but if we then look at Brick Aldridge, who did a fall away slam, nip up fire, if that becomes a common trend, there's probably going to be a problem with that. And again, there's a couple of points throughout this show where there's similar moves done from person to person. For example, Azrael hits a cutter, which instantly on commentary, they're like, well, that's QT Marshall's move, which, I mean, everybody fucking uses a cutter. It's just one of those things. But when you're wrestling on the same card as someone whose finish it is, and that's coming up, you might want to rethink that a little bit. But then in saying that, watching SCU hit their finishing move, I instantly went, well, that's Jurassic Express. And that was so similar that I was like, why would you not see that, especially as a finish that you're using? And this is a problem at the moment when it comes to wrestling, is that pretty much everything is done. How do you make it different and how do you make yourself stand out? It's one of those things that you're probably going to end up running into, is that you will use something that someone else is using. Your name might be the same as someone else's name, but then it's a case of going, how do I make that different? For example, Azrael, I'm not actually that bothered that he hit the cutter. It's just a case of commentary need to be aware that they then can't step on the toes of him by going, QT Marshall does that move. Well, yeah, Randy Orton also does that move. DDP used to do that move. Like, it becomes this game of who's using this move. But then SCU should probably be smart enough that they have their own tag team finish. Do they need to use a tag team finish that also looks very similar to Jurassic Express's? And I also think as well, some people need to be aware of how long a match is going and how long a heat is and what the actual use of the heat is. In the trios match between Peter Avalon, Benoni and Nemeth and the Nightmare Factory, the heat just went on for too long. And it went on for too long without doing anything. And I think this is a pitfall that people fall into sometimes, where they are given a 12, 15-minute match, or not even that, an 8, 10-minute match. And the heat just ends up sitting there because they're like, well, we need to wait until this time before we go. And I was like, now's the time to go. And that's something to be aware of. The heat can't just be something that is just there because it's there. The heat needs to have a purpose, and that's for people to get behind the babyface and to see the babyface come back up and win, or to tell a different story, like to work on an injury, to give us something to invest into, so we want to see this match continue on. It shouldn't be a case of going, I can probably skip through this because I know nothing's going to happen until this hot tag comes. And just as I'm talking on that, it just triggered back in my mind. Baron Black and Lee Johnson. Baron Black hits a big exploder suplex on the outside, which, I mean, really was a big move, especially for something like Dark. You're like, it was way bigger than it needed to be. Comes back into the ring. He's working over the back. And then we go into and I was waiting for this and I was looking at it. We go into we go into the comeback. We go into the finish, and Lee Johnson completely forgets about his back. Like, to the point where it's like, well, what was the point of taking the bump on the outside? What was the point of Baron Black doing everything to you on the back for it to be forgotten about? And that's something that's really important for us as wrestlers to remember, and probably something that wrestling fans will find themselves losing themselves in the moment. And we as wrestlers need to realize, when someone is targeting a body part, when someone is doing something as big as that exploder suplex on the outside, continue that selling throughout the match, because if not, what does it matter? And most importantly, what was the point? If he'd have been hurt, or if he ends up getting hurt because he keeps taking these bumps on the outside and stuff like that, not that I'm saying Lee Johnson is going to do that, but just an example, and then they don't mean anything, it's a waste, and it's a waste on your body. So always think, if someone is working a body part, just like Baron Black was working over the back of Lee Johnson, that selling needs to continue through. And actually, it's going to be a benefit rather than a detriment, because people will see the through line and think, wow, he's overcome all that punishment and he's still working hard, rather than just being like, whoa, I'm fine and I'm all good. And this is something I hold my hands up to. I am also guilty of this, and I've been guilty of it before. But again, it's learning points and it's things to consider. And that was After Dark this week. Again, a different take on this, very much more of a podcast style. You've not had any images of me. Lucky you. What did you think to it? Did you enjoy it? Did it work? What does my audio sound like? Let me know in the comments down below. I could easily keep doing it like this, or I can go back to filming it, whichever works best for people. I don't mind. As always, remember to like the video if you have enjoyed it. Share the video if you're really enjoying this series, and remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll be doing After Darks. I genuinely don't know what I'm going to be doing in terms of Dark and in terms of what this Dark elevation looks like. We'll just have to wait and see. So there might be a bit of a change that comes to that. We have Pursuit Pro Wrestling stuff that'll be coming up. Hopefully, once we get back into wrestling, I'll be able to upload some matches onto here, and I'm just trying to keep that YouTube content churning out. Also, we'll be going back into gyms, so there'll be some fitness stuff coming up. With that, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Again, sorry about the difference in this video format. I've been Liam Slater from Lazarus Personal Training, and I will see you next time.